Martin Popoff from the Contrarians here, back with another edition of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. Today, we're going to actually move forward in time. We're going to actually review something that's a little bit newer. I've got right here a page out of Kerrang, and this is a review of Judas Priest Painkiller by Don K, the great Don K. I mean, I think he's going to get it right? I mean, this show is essentially about looking at these old reviews and seeing what people say about these albums in context at the time. We love our Priest around here. We've got at martinpopoff.com, you can get my early days Judas Priest storybook, Decade of Domination, or my later days one, Turbo Till Now. And then more recently, actually just this last year, we had Judas Priest album by album came out. So this is just a Q&A, a look at every single Judas Priest studio album. And I had Slash on board for this, Charlie Benanti from the great Pantera. Right? And another band, of course. Marty Friedman's in here, Todd Latour, Bobby Ellsworth, Blitz. We've got Andee Blacksugar from the Contrarians, and on and on. Actually, let's just finish it off here. Chris Caffrey, Rich Davenport, John Gaffney, Danko Jones, Jimmy Kay, Sean Kelly, Pete Pardo, Matt Thompson, and Devin Townsend. That's probably the whole list they put in the back cover here. But there you go, martinpopoff.com for those. Let's get into the review. So this is Judas Priest Painkiller. Let's see what Don K has to say about Painkiller. We got a picture of the band. Judas Priest, loads of pain, loads of gain. That's pretty cool. Kerrang was always good with their captions, right? But there's a Priest looking really dressed down and modern. You can see Rob's halfway out of the band here on his way to fight. It almost looks like, right? And we've got a headline says tense, nervous neck ache. That's perfect for this. He gives it a 5K review. Spoiler alert. So Don K is going to be raving about this album, it sounds like. Well, I don't like to take too much credit of this type of thing, but way back in the last issue of Mega Metal K, I suggested that Judas Priest needed two things in order to make any kind of fresh impact on metal: a new drummer and a new producer. Interesting. He realized that things were getting a little stale with Dave Holland and the production of the last few albums. I mean, they're kind of a little all over the place, different kinds of 80s things Tom Allen was doing, I suppose. Anyway, and here we are at the release of Painkiller, the band's 14th LP, and they've gone out and gotten both. The result, nothing less than the finest Priest effort in 8 years. After the slowly burning focus of slabs like Turbo and Ram It Down, Painkiller unleashes the Priest machine in full fury with a healthy growl and a good boot to the arse, courtesy of skin beater Scott Travis and producer Chris Tangerides. It's no coincidence that the first sound you hear on this album is a massive percussive onslaught from Travis, clearly indicating that he's a real live drummer and is looking to destroy. Then the guitars crash land with a mighty roar as we launch into the title cut, and it's heavy, bloodthirsty, and every bit as aggressive as any classic you care to name from LPs like Stained Class or Killing Machine. It's interesting, at this point in 90, Kerrang had been riding the whole hair metal thing, and man, I got to talk to the Parish about this one day, but all this pushing of Thunder and Terror Vision all the time, right? You saw those bands all the time in Kerrang, but so they're riding the whole hair metal thing. So it hasn't really gotten to grunge and alternative at this point when the reviews of traditional bands would get smaller and smaller and less often, right? But at this point, Priest still deserves a big, huge review in the magazine. And we know it was a big, heavy record. It was quite an insistent record. It went gold in the States, so it did well. And fans, I've often been, mentioning this and noticing this, but even when I was doing those top 500 polls and those that turned into those books, people, young fans, a lot of young fans of Priest will rate Painkiller the best album this band ever did. So that's happening a lot. It's sort of analogous to a lot of younger fans thinking Heaven and Hell is the greatest album Black Sabbath ever did, right? Okay, next, that siren scream comes in. The inimitable Mr. Halford reaching for the stratosphere with newfound intensity, and all in all, you have the makings of a bona fide Priest masterwork. Some critics are deriding the band by saying the Priest are attempting to cash in on the success of thrash. Certainly, ripping numbers like All Guns Blazing and Metal Meltdown nod in that direction, but you must remember the Priest had a hand in inventing that genre with cuts like Exciter and Hellbent for Leather. So it's quite fair for them to traverse that territory once again, and indeed the songs fit comfortably into the Priest repertoire. And I never really felt the thrashiness of when I listened to this album, it felt like a bit of a fail towards thrash. It felt like they were almost like reminding that they were a big part of inventing speed metal, and they were making a speed metal album. So to me, this album doesn't sound like a thrash album. It sounds like we're going back to like a very polished version of Raven Wiped Out or Anvil Forged in Fire or Metal on Metal kind of thing, right? To me, this was speed metal or a very polished version of Exciter, Violence, and Force, right? So I never really felt that there was much thrash in this album, but like I say, more speed metal, which is a dated thing, which is long gone, and hence some of my dismay at this album. The other part of the dismay of this album is I just think the lyrics are pretty ridiculous. This meddler than thou primary colored lyrical thing that's going on throughout the album, right? On the other hand, there's some of that oppressively gothic material on hand that was another early Priest staple, with Between the Hammer and the Anvil and Nightcrawler supplying plenty of epic arrangements and thunderous riffs. And there's even a tip to the synthesized experiments of recent years on Touch of Evil, a brooding pounder that features some tasteful background keyboards and stands out as the LP's most unusual offering. For the grandfathers of heavy metal, Priest whip it up pretty fiercely and sustain a high energy level throughout the album's 50-plus minutes. And Chris Tangerini breathes fresh, crackling air into a sound made stale by a rather complacent Tom Allen. Painkiller is a welcome return for these acknowledged masters of the genre, and possibly the best example of traditional British-based heavy metal you're likely to hear this year. He's got that right. So good review, Don. Very cool. He's definitely got that right. It is traditional, like I say, but traditional also means a little bit dated. But yeah, it's Priest thinking really hard, right? And coming up with something that's to me, this album is just a better version of Ram It Down. That's the way I kind of look at Painkiller. And of course, we know it all goes pear-shaped at this point, and Ripper eventually comes in and Rob leaves and starts fight and all that kind of stuff, right? But there you go. So this has been another Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. Hit the like button if you like this review by Don or my review of Don's review. But yeah, you hit subscribe, and you can join our Patreon situation. That gets you on the panels to do all these great panel shows. We've done lots of them on Priest, actually, those panel shows. But there you go. Go listen to some Painkiller and let us know what you think of all these opinions about Painkiller.